Donald Trump's State of the Union, of course, Tuesday night. But on Monday, I got some pretty horrific news.
Now is the time in our service when we open our hearts and share our moments of joy, of sorrow, and concern. Due to the personal nature of these comments, this will not be included in the video of the service. If you're in Parish Hall and you wish to share, please rise at this time. Come and line up in front of the piano. And if you're on Zoom and wish to speak, please raise your hand or the hand icon, and my friends in the audience will help me tag you and make sure you get recognized to share. I now ask that you find a comfortable position. Close your eyes for a moment of quiet meditation. We ask blessings on this community and the communities that touch us. May we find in each other's eyes a safe home for our hearts and our best intentions. May we be granted insight, wisdom, and the courage to move through these times of tension and contraction. I ask that we be granted the expansive home of love in our hearts and in our minds. May we be granted the vision to see ourselves in all others, to create comfort and joy from challenge and strife. May we walk in the grace of our highest intentions, our clearest vision of the future we intend. May our prayers create the new country we seek to build.
Thank you, Lisa. This is the time in the service where you are invited to give financially for the support of this congregation. And for the month of March, the half plate will be going to UU Mass Action, which I just happened to be able to tell you about. So if you're not familiar with UU Mass Action, we are your statewide nonprofit dedicated to providing pathways to live our values in action at the statewide level. We've been around for 20 years, and we have 5 campaigns that we've been running for several years and 2 that we've added on this year. I imagine at least one of these may grab your interest. So the first 5 are immigration justice, housing justice, climate and environmental justice, decarceration, and indigenous justice. And this year, in light of the increased repression, we've added trans justice and democracy. All of these campaigns we do in collaboration. UU Mass Action considers ourselves to be a solidarity organization. So we partner with frontline organizations that are for and by the people being most targeted, to follow their leadership, to be in formation, in collaboration. The one thing that has always been part of UU Mass Action over our 20 years is Advocacy Day. If you haven't been to Advocacy Day, it is usually in the spring. This year it is April 16th, and it's where we gather, train, and practice and meet with our state legislators. Much of this work that we need for justice is happening in our state house. And so we need UUs across the state to be building relationships with your representatives, make them hear our voices in collaboration with those frontline organizations. I've brought interest cards with me that I'll bring to coffee hour, where you're invited to join our newsletter and hear more about Advocacy Day. And I also know that Linda can also clue you in. The offering is now gratefully received.
This reading is from author, activist, and farmer Wendell Berry, who tells us in his 1969 collection of essays against the Vietnam War. Wars have never made peace or preserved it or fostered its ideals. To have peace, you must make peace with your enemy. To make peace only with your friends is to avoid the issue and to permit a great principle to become absurd. Far from making peace, wars invariably serve as classrooms and laboratories where men and techniques and states of mind are prepared for the next war. Authentic peace is no more passive than war. Like war, it calls for discipline and intelligence and strength of character, though it calls also for higher principles and aims. If we are serious about peace, then we must work together for it ardently, seriously, continuously, carefully, and bravely as we have ever prepared for war.
Coming of American royalty, anointed by the court supreme with all immunity, to prevent the presidential king. It's up to you and me if democracy goes marching on. Power lust is never satisfied. Billionaires, they want to rule our lives. Pay the wages and check up our living costs. Enough, demand your rights. In 100 news reports, Project 2025, our freedoms will report. With the tyrant on day one, our rights will be under assault. Will the king be president? Read a fiery manual in angry tones of zeal by those who want the freedom to make their shady deals. Their endless itch for power will force us all to kneel at the altar of gold and green. Power lust is never satisfied. Billionaires, they want to rule our lives. Pay the wages and check up our living costs. Enough, demand your rights. Destroy 100 years of protective regulation. It'll only take a day or so of signing proclamations. Clean air and water, living wages, public education, gone by the stroke contraception, it means no fertilization. The right to choose belongs to us, so please pay close attention. No woman's life should be at risk of faulty legislation. We won't be like rabbits. Project 2020 pages. It hurts the young, the old, the disabled, the people of all ages. We must rise up and take a stand and verbalize our rages. Our freedom depends on us. Our lust is never satisfied. Billionaires, they want to rule our lives. Pay the wages and jack up our living costs. Enough, demand your rights. Enough, demand your rights.
Thank you, grannies. Good morning. Thank you, I like yours too. So, per my introduction, my name is Claire Carl, and as a non-binary human, one of my permutations is that I have flexible first names. So you can also just call me Claire, you can also just call me Carl, you can call me Carl Claire or Claire Carl. There's no wrong way to do it unless you try to give me a nickname. No KC, no CK. Stick with what I told you. And I use they, them pronouns. And I'm very glad to be here again, even though it's been a crazy year since I last saw you. I want to acknowledge that all of us woke up yesterday morning to devastating news. Just want to take a moment to hold that. It's been a rough time for our democracy. And as I get into that this morning, I want to start by just grounding a little bit in how I come to this topic. So I am the child of two public school teachers, now retired, one of whom has voted their entire life in the Democratic Party, and the other, up until Obama, voted entirely Republican. And I understood as a child that watching my parents talk about politics, that both parties had something to contribute, that both had values that you could trace back to love. And I really appreciate seeing that. And there was some amount of lightheartedness also, that they would, come election day, joke at each other, should we even bother, we'll cancel each other out. There was a jovialness, a ability to talk. And that's not really where we are now. And when our nation democratically elected an authoritarian for the second time, my reaction was the same as it was in 2016, which is, as a force of nature, I'm like, let's go. Jumping into action. What do we got to do? Grab your weapon of choice. We ride at dawn. Which, to be fair, is not everyone's cup of tea the morning after. My own partner is like, can you tone it down a little bit? But I am the kind of person that runs at a problem. I want to get in there. And this time around, it's been harder for me. I've had to notice, am I trying to pour from an empty cup? Because that's really not working. I've had to make sure that I'm nourishing myself, taking care of myself, singing, going to the beach, walking in the woods, because it's really rough. This new accelerated phase of the American empire. And I find myself putting my mind towards the native people of this land. After all, they've been running this race for centuries. And I want to share with you words from a song by Lila June that I cannot stop returning to. If you do not know Lila June, she is an Indigenous musician, scholar, and community organizer of Navajo, Cheyenne, and European lineages. And her voice intros a song with these spoken words. In our old societies, the greatest honor and bravery was bestowed to those who gave their lives, not those who took lives. In what ways might we give our lives to this war? In what ways might we dedicate our time and energy to the children, the women, the elders? Yes, it is a battle of sorts, but not one of physical might. No, this is a battle of spiritual fortitude, where the deepest love and compassion are the only source of true and lasting victory. There will be no winning in a game where even one person loses. The only victory comes from lifting up all beings, all relations. And the only weapons we may use are truth, faith, and love. Wow. I give this sermon almost every Sunday, and I read that quote over and over, and it still gets me. It still grounds me. It still wows me. It's 9 sentences with layers and layers of truth. The first is that energetic difference between giving your life versus trying to take. Now, I come from a climate organizing background before I came to UU Mass Action. And in the environmental justice and climate justice movement, I was working on campaigns to fight toxics, to fight the oil companies, fight the gas companies, and these days we add to that list the billionaires, the oligarchs, the would-be kings. It's a lot. It's exhausting. And I have thought to myself, do we always have to have this fighting stance? What would it look like? What would it feel like to have a healing, loving orientation? I remember this really clearly during the height of the pandemic when we were dealing with a literal illness, and still the slogan, instead of we're gonna heal COVID, the slogan was, we're gonna fight COVID. I was like, oh my God, we can't even take the time, we can't even get into the healing energy, but it's actually an illness. I mean, where would we be now if we could have had that kind of healing, loving energy during the pandemic? What would it look like if in our campaigns we said we are working to heal the climate, to heal the oil companies, the gas companies of their greed, sickness, the billionaires, the oligarchs, and the would-be kings of their power, sickness? Maybe that's what trauma-informed activism is. It reminds me of the story of the Wendigo. If you've never heard of the Wendigo is from Algonquin culture, which spans from here in the Northeast into the Midwest. And the Wendigo is a malevolent spirit who may possess you or other humans. And when you are possessed by the Wendigo, you have an insatiable hunger to eat and take and eat and take, even to the point of cannibalism, to eat other humans. I have heard it said that when some of my ancestors came and arrived in Plymouth at Turtle Island, some of the native people wondered, are they okay? I think they might be possessed by a Wendigo. And I'm sure they brought a lot of trauma with them, whether it was religious persecution, their own Black Death pandemic, witch trials, you name it. About a year ago now, I was at the Federal Building in downtown Boston. There had started to be spontaneous gatherings, protests at the Federal Building. This was around the time Elon Musk was trying to steal all of our data. And I went just to kind of check it out, see where things were going. And someone in the crowd spontaneously started a chant, and people joined in. Lock him up, lock him up. And part of me was disappointed. You know? Are we just gonna be revengey and do to them what they did to us? And I mused in my head, I wonder what would happen if I tried to start a chant that was like, mandatory therapy, mandatory therapy. Will people join in or just look at me really weird? Now, I do want to be clear. We have to be cautious about using terms around sickness and who needs mandatory therapy. Those terms have been used as weapons against Native folks, against queer folks, etc. Lila June goes on to say, there will be no winning in a game where even one person loses. Wow, not even one. That is a really tall order. And it's gorgeous. If you've hung out in some progressive spaces, you may have heard the term collective liberation. It's thrown around as kind of like, oh yeah, we're working for collective liberation. You know, that like very small thing. But it's actually a huge thing. And it means everybody. It means a movement that's working towards a vision that also would liberate the dictators, the oppressors, the abusers, everyone. Not even one person loses. There's a whole lot of parts of the movement that aren't operating that way, which is why I'm so often glad to be standing with a banner that says, siding with love. Because that, to me, truly embodies this. It gets us pointed towards that multicultural, deep democracy and abundance mindset that works for everyone. Now, not everybody is on the same team working for that vision. Team democracy, the team that I'm on, that you're on, that the Raging Grannies are on. Author and scholar Sir John Glubb, he studied 13 empires. He looked in the Middle East, he looked in Asia, he looked in Europe, and he noticed and documented a startling pattern of empire. That over 250 years, they go through 6 stages and then they decline. They go. Now, if you don't know, this summer, the 4th of July is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So we're right on track. The thing, though, the last stage of empire that he describes, it's called the Age of Decadence. It describes a time where wealth and power have led to petty and negative behaviors, including narcissism, consumerism, materialism, nihilism, a celebrity culture that worships athletes, actors, and singers. Sound familiar, anyone? I find this strangely comforting, that this moment that we are in, it's actually happened many, many times. Empires have risen and they have fallen throughout history. This moment is unique and new and entirely ordinary. Lila June goes on to say, yes, it is a battle of sorts, but not one of physical might. No, this is a battle of spiritual fortitude, where the deepest love and compassion are the only source of true and lasting victory. At home, where I work in my office, I have on the wall a quote by Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was an American political activist, prominent leader in the movement for civil rights, along with MLK, and a gay black man. And the quote from him says this: "Loving your enemy is manifest in putting your arms not around the man, but around the social situation, to take power from those who misuse it, at which point they become human too." Right? Loving our opponent, loving our enemy is not like a go out and hug an ICE agent. That's not what that looks like. I don't recommend that. I don't think that would go well. But I do have love and compassion for the people who would make a life choice to take the job and work at ICE. They are an opponent in spiritual fortitude. I want to work to build power with you and with many others with love and compassion to take back enough power that we can dismantle ICE, at which point everyone who works there maybe should get some therapy, do some reparations for the harm they've caused, but they can become more human too. And finally, my favorite part from Lila June's quote: "The only weapons we may use are truth, faith, and love." That is definitely the movement that I am trying to be in. Not all of us are going to be at the standout or doing the ICE watch or at the State House. Those are important actions, but there's also so much more. There's singing as raging grannies in wigs and aprons, right? There's making sandwiches behind the scenes or holding the coffee hour. Any way that you are bringing truth, faith, or love into the world, you are helping this movement towards our collective liberation as this empire disintegrates and we have an opportunity to transform. And so I ask you just to pick your weapon of choice, because we ride at dawn. Please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 318, "We Would Be One." There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There's too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There's too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day.
When you raised all those taxes on the poor, we were outraged when you authorized those pipelines. Our country's gone to pot, and our grandkids getting shot. So we're raging because now you've pissed off grandmas. Gerrymandered our elections, and it's harder now to vote. You robbed women of their rights to plan their families. Gay or straight or trans or poor, we're worse off than we were before. You ignored us, so now you've pissed off grandma. Social Security is in danger, and our Medicare is too. Folks are dying every day for lack of health care. You take prisoners locked in cages, workers can't get living wages. This is cruel, and you really pissed off grandmas. But you're shielding public taxes to support those private schools, and you're banning books and teaching whitewashed history. With our teachers unsupported and our immigrants deported, the morale of these truly pissed off grandmas. You see fat cats getting richer on the spoils of your wars. You buy bombs and drones while kids can't get school lunches. We say stop your racist wars and start listening to the poor. Wake up, heroes, cause now you pissed off grandma. We've heard you claim your pious Christian says to be, while our veterans sleep homeless on our sidewalks. And while folks are going broke, you're concerned about who's woke. You're a face of crazy pissed off grandma. What we grannies have grown wise to your greed and to your lies, and we know wrong from right, right from wrong. We'll be singing through our pain with the Poor People's Campaign. Don't you vote, cause you really pissed off grandma. We'll vote you out, cause you really pissed off grandma.
It's excellent.